So the San Francisco Shock are just playing a rush composition at this point. They're playing super high tempo, speed boost in, Zarya bubble, shred these motherfuckers. I will say, I am a little bit surprised that Violet isn't playing the Ana in this comp, because the Bionade can be a huge win condition if you want to play really aggressive. And to be honest, you're trying to play so fast that Violet is just going to stick with the rest of your team anyway. So I do think it's interesting that they opt for Violet on the Moira here. Might be partially because Violet isn't that comfortable on the Ana, but also maybe because they just want Violet to be able to avoid getting fucking hooked and slept and shot by Stitch and all sorts of stuff. They just want him to be a bit more survivable. It's a nice bubble there from Choyobin, but they just burn through the bubble and Stitch gets the kill anyway. And this rush comp is very effective. I mean, who do they manage to pick off first? They go around the right-hand side, they find a really nice pick on Aim God, and at that point it's donezo because they just don't have the healing to be able to sustain it. And then they just rush down the rest of the team. They rush down Decay, they rush down Janu. It's not really a typical counter composition that the Shock are running, but it's a comp that can win against the Justice. That is ridiculous that they boop Decay onto the high ground and then he kills Violet. Shock have to reset now that Violet is dead. I'm surprised by how well Ans has done on Mei. I'm surprised by how well Ans has done on every single hero that he has played this season. How has this guy got a deep hero pool? He was like a Widowmaker, not a Widowmaker one trick, but he was like a Widowmaker specialist, picked out from ranked. And this guy shows us the McCree early on in the season, the Tracer at some point during the season, the Sombra during the season. Yeah, and then he plays the Mei as well. Like, what the fuck is this guy? He's a fucking gamer, dude. He's crazy. How has he got this kind of depth? How is this possible? I thought this guy was going to be a Widowmaker one-trick pony that they would just bring out as their Widow specialist. And instead, he's... This might be a bit of a hot take, but he's arguably been more important for the team than Striker has this season. I mean, even if you get rid of the Widowmaker completely, even if Ants never played Widow for the Shock, he's more flexible, and he's arguably had more impact than Striker has this season. Like, that's wild. That is wild. Ants has been probably the best DPS player for the Shock on a roster that also has Rascal and Striker. What the fuck? It's crazy how good this guy has been this season. Just grind the hero your team needs, no? No, it's not that simple, man. You can't just boil it down to just play some Mei and ranked, pog. Like, most people aren't smart enough to be able to pick up every hero at an owl level. Yeah, they're just not. Especially if they're a Widowmaker player, where normally that is like all aim, no brain. Just play what we need, forehead. I mean, that's not how Overwatch works. You need normally a large amount of time and a different mental skill set in order to play various different heroes. I think Reinforce said in the chat he might be hindsight Rookie of the Year. I still don't think he's Rookie of the Year because Alarm and Lijiang exist. Like, Ants is great and he's been hyper flexible. But Alarm and Lijiang have been the best in their roles, and they're rookies. I think Ants is a pretty strong third pick, and then you've got people like Krong and Lip, but I don't think, in my opinion, Ants has... I mean, Ants has not been the best DPS player this year. He might be in the argument for like certain heroes that he plays, but I think you would struggle to say Ants has been the best DPS player this year. Like, there's so many different heroes that are covered by that. There's so much different stuff that goes into that kind of thing. Like, it's such a... There's so many deep players. I mean, Fleta has been insane this year, yeah. Alarm, better than Ants, better than Lijiang, I think. I could maybe get on board with that. I think Alarm is just the easy candidate for Rookie of the Year, and in my opinion, probably the second best candidate for MVP as well. I would put Void ahead of him, but I think Alarm is a super strong candidate for MVP too. But I think there are many other players that you would have in the same conversation for like best DPS player this season. The thing is, so many of the DPS players get rotated in and out that it becomes a very hard conversation to have sincerely. But yeah, I mean, I think that Fleta has a stronger argument than Ants for best DPS player of the season. Suede, thanks for the 100 bits. I think Shock losing Sinatra and Architect put a lot of pressure on Rascal, which might be why Krusty is coaching him to play more heroes. I have a feeling he's going to do the same thing with Tayo. I don't think Krusty is coaching Rascal to play more heroes. What hero have we seen Rascal on this season that he's never played before? I mean, apart from Echo, because she was brand new. Is there any hero that Rascal... Oh, you meant Ants, right. Shock losing Sinatra and Architect put a lot of pressure on Rascal, which might be why Krusty is coaching Ants to play more heroes. Right, I see what you mean. Yes, sorry, I misunderstood because you said him to refer to Ants, and I didn't realize. I was just reading the rest of your message. Yeah, definitely could be. I think I would be very interested to know how hands-on Krusty has been with Ants' development this season. Because it might just be that Ants is a hidden giga brain. Or it could be that Krusty is a fucking genius and has coached this ranked player into being a freak on multiple heroes. I don't know. It's probably a bit of column A, bit of column B, but it's hard to tell what proportion of each. Okay. Shock pushing in with the Coalescence. Teleport the Reaper behind them as well. EMP comes out and catches 3 players, but they've still got the healing from the Coalescence. A very nice engagement from the San Francisco Shock. They still managed to kill 2 players, but Shock is still going to be able to win this. And yeah, the fact that Super has a shield, and Choyobin has bubbles, and Violet has healing, means that the Shock are able to avoid getting killed in these fights, basically. Like, the hooks aren't as effective, the Zarya doesn't do as much damage because the shield is really useful. Obviously, the San Francisco Shock's composition would have been the meta thing to run had... Or I mean, not obviously, but the San Francisco Shock's comp would have been far more meta if the nerfs to shield hadn't come through. You wouldn't be seeing people running Hog Zarya around the place at the beginning of this season. Because, I mean, for starters, because Hog wasn't buffed as well, but also because the shields are just a pretty hard counter to the Hog hooks and to the damage that Decay wants to put out. And the Shock are so fast at being able to approach that they're really, really solid at being able to isolate targets from the rest of the team. Tuba trying to back cap. The Shatter, the 5-man Shatter. Huge. That won him some sneakers. Super will be enjoying that one when he goes around in his comfy soles. Daddy, Chaddy, Faddy, Shaddy, Sneaker Champ, Delisi. Yeah, I like that one, Savizian. This is the Shock's best comp. I mean, this is the Shock's best look. I don't think you need to play this exact 6 heroes, but some kind of Reinhardt Rush comp is definitely the Shock's best look, yeah. Intenside, thanks for the 100 bits. As for what Super said in stream, when they were trying out Ants, he said Ants had the aim, but his mechanics and positioning needed work. So for sure, Krusty has been very hands-on with Ants, teaching him all that and more. Yeah, that's a very strong piece of circumstantial evidence then. I mean, we all know what an incredible coach Krusty is. Actually, it might not even be Krusty as well, to be fair. Like, it could be Junkbuck as well, because I think Krusty is more... I might be wrong with this, but I think Krusty divided the roles between the 3 coaches last year, between him, Junkbuck, and 9K, where one of them was very heavy on, like, the macro plan, and one of them was very heavy on, like, the micro, you know, like, teaching individual players how to be better at their roles. So it might not be Krusty, it might be Junkbuck as well, but either way, we know the San Francisco Shock's coaches are fucking god tier, so, yeah, they probably had a large hand in it. But still, like, the player themselves needs to be coachable and smart enough to be able to take what the coaches are saying and take it on board. Shock were pretty close there to being able to just win this fight outright at the front there. They were so close to being able to just kill Decay and Janu through the blizzard. But the peel was very effective from the Washington Justice. The Shock coaching team is best in the league. Yes, I agree. I think Russian 9K are probably a pretty close second. I mean, when you compare the tools that the Shock and the Paris Eternal had to deal with, I mean, the Shock have definitely got better players that have been good for longer as well. So it is incredibly impressive that Paris Eternal's coaching staff has taken players that looked like they were washed up and turned them into genuine top-tier contenders. Yeah, they didn't do too well in the playoffs, but I think as a season overall, you've got to give enormous amounts of credit to Rush and 9K for what they've been able to do over there in Paris. And on the other side of the coin, I mean, you've got people who are very good at scouting, like the LA Valiant with Packing 10, who deserve credit for their coaching too. But I'm not going to give Hunter any credit because they have looked a lot worse since Gumba left. See if he's still in my chat. Intensite, thanks for the 100 bits. You're tight, that's true. I can't wait to see what Twilight will be playing apart from Anna next season. Yeah, that would be pretty good. Kooky? Yeah, Kookie's also apparently... Was it Kooky? No, it was Awesome Guy that was talking about his scouting for the London Spitfire, right? Kooky has just been coaching the Florida Mayhem. Yeah, I think Florida have definitely made a lot of inroads, but I don't think Kookie's done as much for Florida as Russia 9K have done for Paris, or the Shock coaches have done for their team over the course of the entire year. Yeah, Kookie's definitely someone to still be monitoring going forwards into the future, but if we had a Coach of the Year award, I wouldn't really put Kookie up there with Russian 9K and Junkbuck and Krusty and Packing 10, to be honest, as well. I would have those three above them. Packing 10 for very different reasons, but still very valid. So EMP used in the middle of this fight. The Justice rotating ultimates pretty effectively. They've still got a nano boost for the next engagement, and Decay's at 70% of his ult as well. But Shock should be able to go for a fast engage in the middle of this, and they can go for like a Grav Blizzard as well to just completely... Yeah. They should be engaging with the Coalescence here. Oh, Violet gets slept. I don't think I even saw that when the game was live. What a sick sleep onto Violet. And now Violet is not with the rest of his team. Violet's miles behind. Look at Violet's positioning. He's miles behind the rest of his team, not really healing the front line. Super's on half health. Maybe because it wasn't communicated effectively. What a sick sleep from Aim God. Super's so weak. What does... This is a teleport into the backlines from Striker. And he finds the kill onto... No, wait, it's not a teleport into the backlines. Stitch is just caught by the long rotation. Oh yeah, it's not a teleport at all. They just go on this long rotate all the way around with trying to use the Coalescence, but it gets slept and Stitch gets caught out because he was playing in the backlines over here, but now the backline has become the front line. And they don't have a Lucio, so they can't react in the same kind of time. Grav to kill Decay. Janu got nanoed to try and keep him alive. He gets destroyed. And this kind of high-tempo gameplay is so good from the San Francisco Shock. And it's such an effective counter to the Washington Justice because the Justice comp gets value over time. But the Shock's composition just... Instead of diving into their backline, they just rush and rotate around until they are in your backlines. That sound barrier just gets up in time to save the majority of their team, but doesn't save Ants. Super gets slept here, and Janu rezzed as well. Super bionated. Violet close to the... Violet very close to his Coalescence here. But once he gets it out, EMP is huge. But they're still quite able to keep people alive. I actually can't remember who wins this round. Is it the Shock that end up winning overall? Ants, by the way, just playing Tracer, because why the fuck not? The guy's a god gamer. Yeah, shock win this round overall. I mean, there were definitely opportunities for Justice to be able to come back in and win there. They had an EMP that caught all of the players, but the shock kept Super in a very safe position. With how this went down, do you think teams could just play rush comps to counter Washington? Not really. I think the rush comps worked so well because the Justice was slow to move players and rotate them around. Like, the fact that Stitch got caught on Ashe, the fact that Stitch dies on Ashe because he's getting run down by a Reinhardt that's gone on a big flank around the rest of his team. If they played again against the Shock, I think Stitch would be much faster to just, like, rotate his positioning, and so he wouldn't get caught by the rush. I think Shock... It's an interesting counter. I don't think it's that effective. I think the Shock can pull it off because the Shock are the Shock and they're incredibly good. I don't think any other team would really be able to beat the Washington Justice running a rush comp. I don't think it's like a theoretically effective counter. I think it's just because it's the Shock. And yeah, you obviously can't run Rhine rush comps on every map either. It's very map dependent. Obviously, Control Center's a good choice for it, but at the same time, we saw the Washington Justice in their games after this map run Tuba on the Pharah, even on Control Center. So they would be doing a lot of damage behind Super's shield. So if you imagine that round playing out, the one that we just saw, but with Stitch on Tracer or Sombra and Tuba on the Pharah, that's now what you have to think about dealing with the Shock's rush comp. And I think if Justice are smart enough with how they rotate around the map, yeah, they don't have a Lucio, but I still think they're probably able to get Aim God and... I mean, Aim God's the only vulnerable player, so yeah, I think they're smart enough to be able to rotate Aim God into safe positions against the Shock. And eventually Tuba would get his value. Eventually Tuba's damage would be overwhelming. I like that Super was subbed in here to mirror the Hog as well. I think this round, this Super on Hog Chobin on Zarya looks a lot better than Smurf on the Zarya, sorry. Choyobin's probably a better Hog than Super is, but Choyobin's a much better Zarya than Smurf is. Super gets killed during his hook animation again there. Just when he's all static and can't really dodge around. Again, Super hooking first in the fights, not being patient with his cooldowns. And I think this is again because the San Francisco Shock haven't scrimmed with this composition very much. Decay and Janu are just so patient with how they use their cooldowns. Whereas other Hog Zaryas, they just throw those hooks out willy-nilly. Janu throws a hook out there, but his team is ready to heal him. Here's the other thing. Look at this. Like, in this situation right here, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. Super goes for a hook, but as he goes for the hook, people are piling damage into him. So while he's just... He has to go for a wide peak in order to hook. And then while he's hooking, he is vulnerable for... I actually don't know how long the hook animation is, but let's say it's 1 second, a second and a half, something like that. That is a very vulnerable point in time for Super because he's wide swung out. He isn't going to get bubbled because they need to save the bubble for later on in the team fight. There's no defense matrix or that kind of shit to be able to save him either. And he's just static. He can't really move. He can't move. He can't take a breather. And so I'd like to run this in like slow motion here as well because the... Okay, as Super swings around, like he's already taken a little bit of damage. And then when he goes for the hook, the damage gets piled into him, and he hooks in Janu, who then just shoots him in the head. So, by going for these, like, wide swing hook plays, you expose yourself to way more damage than you would if you just played patiently over the course of the fight. And I think this is part of the thing that the Justice really focuses on as well, is making sure that they win these engagements by just having the cooldowns ready second in the fights. And the Pharah here can dodge ants most of the time. What did the Kawaii Cookie say? Because I saw someone replying to them. Where is that comment in my chat? I don't know. I don't know what they said. Anyway, the chat is having its own little conversation right now. So the San Francisco Shock here, their tank line are not being as patient in how they're taking the tank versus tank battles, and also, even though Ants theoretically should counter Tuber, he just never gets sightlines on Tuber. Tuber's always miles above his head, shooting down at choke points, and this is a map where you can get big value from the Pharah. I think they would even see more value if they mirrored the Pharah, but obviously Ants isn't going to do that. I say obviously, I mean, fuck knows what this guy can play, but I wouldn't have expected it. The Nano Tuber as well is just huge. He doesn't have to worry about Ants at all. He can now just go straight into Ants' sightlines and demolish them. I love these Hogfire compositions. I think they're very hard to counter. Because even though, in theory, you can play Hog yourself and a hit scan, your hit scan player just can't get angles onto the Pharaoh a lot of the time. Did Ants come straight from ranked? Ah, I see. That was the question earlier on. I think Ants played a very small amount of time on some tier 3, tier 2 team, didn't he? And then he got picked up. But basically, I mean, he basically came out of ranked. Look at that. Look at that rocket juggling as well. Ants gets juggled up in the air by a combination of Decay and Tuber, and then the rockets take him out. So clean. So nice. And the hit scan is getting countered by the Pharah, just because of the map geometry and the angles that Tuber can play. Super back on the ball, just desperation for the OT, but this round, the San Francisco Shock got comprehensively outplayed, actually. I kind of forgot how much of a role this round was. I did like the Super Hog look. I think they played the same I think they played this thing on the next round as well. But on this round, they just got bopped by the Pharah. Not just the Pharah, they also got bopped in terms of the tank v tank battle that they were taking, because Super Decay and Janu are more, you know, patient and principled with how they're using their abilities, I think. But did they play Rhine again here? Or did they play the Hog? I can't remember. I think they played the Hog, didn't they? Yeah, they played the Hog. If Super can expand his hero pool to contest Smurf's playtime, then the Shock are in a much better position. His energy and the way Shock rally around him, even in ranked, is invaluable. Correct me if I'm wrong. I am inclined to agree with you, actually. I think Super provides a really important presence on this team. I think part of the reason why the San Francisco Shock look at their best when they play Reinhardt Rush compositions is not just because Super's on the Rhine, but because Super's in, just like period. I think if they can spend this week getting Super's Winston up to scratch and getting not just Super's Winston, but Super and the rest of the team's coordination playing Winston, Diva, Sombra Reaper, Lucio Moira. You know, like the Sombra Reaper dive kind of comp. Sombra Reaper Rush, but with a Winston. If they can get up to scratch playing that with Super, I would be more inclined to run Super on all of the maps in these playoffs. Because it gives you the options to play Rush when you need to on Control. It gives you the option to mirror the Hog Zarya in a much better way than if Smurf is in the roster. And it gives you the option as well to... or not the option, it gives you the potential added benefit of having Super's presence in the team for playing the Reaper Sombra comps. Now, I don't know whether that's what they're going to do. That would require Super's Winston to be at a really top level. But if you can, I think it's worth trying. Because there are times in these maps where you're playing some Winston Diva composition and you would probably like to swap to Hog Zarya. But if Smurf is in, you don't really want to. I guess the question really comes down to, is Super's Winston worse than Smurf's Zarya? Super has played a good Winston in the past. It hasn't been Smurf level, but it's been good. Like Super in 2019 played some really nice Winston. Mostly in like Goats-esque compositions, like Winston Goats, but I don't know. I don't know whether Super's got it in him, but if he does, it would give Shock a different layer. What if you play Smurf on Hog? Well, yeah, maybe, but I'm not sure whether Smurf can play the Hog. I thought Super played Roadhog on this round. Did they not? Yeah. No. When do they... I thought they ran it at some point. Oh, he does. He switches over to it later. Yeah, I was going to say. So, again, the compositions, it's a really nice top-down view to be able to tell here. So, Ants is coming off the respawn because he didn't quite know what hero he wanted to play, I think. And Striker's on the Sim. So, they're playing a Sim McCree kind of composition, which is alright, I suppose, if you get to set up on the point. But Striker is coming off the respawn miles away from the rest of his team. So, that is not a good thing to begin with. And also, they still don't have anybody to deal with Tuba. I know that Ants theoretically should be able to deal with Tuba. You know, he's a McCree. He should be able to counter a Pharah. But the Pharah is just going to loop around the back and loop around these side windows and be able to play such tight angles that Ants really won't be able to get good shots onto the Pharah Mercy. It's hard at the best of times to only have one player in a position to counter the Pharah Mercy. But on a map like this, where you have to play such tight angles when you're playing inside the point the entire time, so difficult, man. So difficult. So the Shock push forward there to try and reconnect with Ants, but they get destroyed. Smurf was saying that Super coming in map 2 against Philly in the Countdown Cup and winning that map was a crucial moment for them because they were feeling a little boomed. Daddy Super, the hype man. Yeah, that's definitely something that he adds to the team. Super plays too aggressive, that's why Smurf plays. Super is more aggressive than Smurf, that's why Violet plays, because Violet is more of a fragger than healer. I mean, I don't know really how you can say that Super is a more aggressive Winston when we haven't seen him play it in months. I don't really think that the data is out there to be able to make that kind of assessment. I mean, you might be correct, but I just don't think the evidence is really there to make that kind of conclusion. Why did Ants spawn... Oh, because Ants was originally on the May. Wait, no, what the fuck is he doing? Oh, Ants sees the May. Ants sees the Pharah and goes back to spawn to swap to McCree. It's just so tough to reconnect with Ants in this fight. Ants is just going to have such a tough time reconnecting, and that forces the Shock to play aggressive. Instead of just staying on the point and then going for a rush when the Justice are in a bad position, the Shock have to put themselves in a bad position now to kind of distract so that Ants can come into the fight. Not a good start for the Shock. Was it Ants Gigabrain or was he told? I mean, it was probably just Ants making that call himself when he saw the Pharah. Maybe it was discussed before. Like maybe they said, let's play May Symmetra, but if they have a Pharah, we'll swap, you know? Like maybe that was the call at the beginning of the round. All right, now San Francisco Shock go over to this composition. I really like this composition for the Shock. It combines the enormous damage and Discord Orb in the backlines with the Hog Zarya tank line. So the fight is always going to go long because your Hog and your Zarya can stay alive and contest the enemy Hog and Zarya. There's no high ground, so there's no need to control high ground, so you don't need the Winston and the D.Va. They would just be hands down worse picks. And you still have the Ants on the Ashe. So now you have... You can put Ants on a high ground and try and control Tuba a little bit. Tuba's still going to get a lot of value in the fight, but Ants, now that he's not stuck in a rush comp where he has to play on the point, is going to have better sightlines onto the Pharah. Tuba's going to have to play a little more safe.
No one's called it that, but I just always think of it as that when there's a Pharah inside. Well, there you go. You made it a thing. That's okay.
As for Super and Choyobin, I seem to remember them playing the tank battle much better this time. Super plays more safely with his hook, is able to get the hook onto Janu. It ends up not working because Tuba gets too much value from his Pharah, but I mean, this This is wild that Violet uses trance in this situation. I mean, Violet is just stuck in the back lines, and he uses trance 2v5. 2v5. No idea why. That's such a bad ultimate from Violet. That's like a classic Violet trance, though, to be fair. I thought, yeah, I thought it was GG. A Josh Transcendence, that's what they're saying. Yeah, it literally is. That is a sideshow trance. But they do such a great job of destroying Janu here. I think this is a big mistake from Janu using his whole hog in this position, because he's got to realize that he's... I mean, he's kind of checkmated, really, isn't he? Because he's got the Discord orb on him and then he gets hooked, so he's kind of fucked anyway there. But so I guess it isn't that much of a mistake. But when you whole hog, you've got to know you're dying instantly here, because Ants and Violet are just going to be shredding you, and the Discord orb's going to be put on you, and you're just going to die. Choyobin dies, but now Decay is pushing into a Discord orb here, and Choyobin gets rezzed anyway. So in the mirror, in the Hog Zarya mirror, I think the Discord orb is much better than the Ana. In most compositions, when you're running the Hog Zarya, the Ana is really good. But directly in the Hog Zarya mirror, I think the Zen is better. I think the Discord orb is just too much. It just gives you an enormous advantage in the tank fight. You'd think that Bionade would be a bigger win condition, but Discord orb is just too good. By the way, Aim God nearly wins that fight against Choyobin. What the fuck? Guys, hello? It's Anagoats versus Zengoats all over again? Yeah, I would say so. At the top level, the Zen Discord orb is almost always just too good. There is very rarely a meta where Ana is better than Zen. I know that sounds weird considering that this season we've seen a lot of Ana being played and not very much Zen, but that's because those comps were rush comps that were really fast-paced. But any kind of slow-paced composition, any kind of team fights that go on for long, the Zen is just hands down the best, because the Discord orb gets so much value over time. And the Zen damage over time is just crazy. You can't out-heal it. So I think Aim God has the Nana boost, so actually probably should stay on the Ana here, but Aim God should probably swap over to the Zen in a bit. Super doesn't have to worry about whole hogging because there's no Discord orb and Zen damage for him to have to worry about. Super just demolishing now. Again, though, being much more patient, not wasting his cooldowns until the fight is, like, in the middle of the fight. So, pretty good. I might start one-tricking Zen in ladder, to be honest. I think you will get demolished in ladder, because your teams aren't going to give you a permanent mercy pocket, and they're not going to peel for you effectively. Yeeted Grav, they break the Zarya bubble. Two-man Grav Pulse Bomb. Very nice ult cycling from the San Francisco Shock. Again, running the Tracer as well. Striker on the Tracer. Which, like I said, the Tracer is much better than the Sombra in the mirror. So you remember when San Francisco Shock earlier on in the series were running Rascal on the Sombra in the mirror? That's bad. It's just not that good. In the mirror comp, you need your Tracer to be able to do more damage, to be able to harass the backline, to be able to follow up on kills. I mean, the Pulse Bomb is also pretty good for being able to combo with the Grav. It's not amazing. Obviously not quite as good as the EMP, but the EMP itself is not that great either because you don't have very much follow-up. It's a slow-paced composition. So Striker on the Tracer here is enormous for the Shock. Check the bits. Thank you for the 100 bits. I can't click that link. You need to paste it in the chat. I can see that it's a tweet from Ants, but I can't click it if you donate it to me. I keep telling people this, but if you donate me links, I can't click them. You have to spam them in the chat. All right. Oops. Let me click on it. Okay. What is this? Sombra stats. Is this all season? Or is this just for playoffs? Where did this come from? That's sick. The Lance is at the top there. That's absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Why am I not following ads? Give him more time? Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Ants doesn't have as much playtime as the others, so, you know, the stats are going to be much more variable, but that is incredibly good. Shows you how insanely fast Hisu is at building his EMPs as well. Lip has played much more over the course of the season, so I would expect his number to be a bit lower, unless this is playoffs only. I'm not sure. Anyway, Lip is so smart in terms of how he uses the Sombra that I don't think the average being down a little bit makes much difference. But Hisu does build his ults fucking quickly. It's from today's Grav Bag on the Owl site. Oh, that's each player's fastest. Oh, this isn't an average. This is their fastest ever. That's kind of useless then. I mean, that is a pretty useless stat if that's the stat. Let me take a look at the article that it comes from. Let's find some context for this instead of just wildly speculating. Where is this? Here we go. The scope of Sombra players changed in a few significant ways. Because the dominant team comp wants to smash into the enemy head first, Sombra players... Yep, definitely agree with this from... is this Emerald that writes these? I think it normally is, right? Yeah, Emerald. She's a very good writer for the Overwatch League. What we've seen from the best teams to run this comp is absurdly quick EMPs. Yep, absolutely true. Rather than look at the full gamut of Sombra stats, because that's a whole lot of numbers, I just want to look at the ult charge time for the 20 Sombra players this weekend. Oh yeah, so this is just from this weekend. Ants only just hit 15 minutes played this weekend, so there's a bit of a small sample size caveat on his 62, but still, I was very impressed with the Shock playing Ants on Sombra. He played against the Atlanta Reign. They rolled that game, so of course his stats are going to look good, but still, Ants himself looked good. And also, fucking hell, Hisu builds his ult so fast. Holy Christ. But also, I think the reason that Lip is further down here is because he was playing against slower-paced compositions. The NYXL were playing Zen Mercy with the Ashe Tracer quite a lot. So that's a slower-paced comp. It's harder to build up the EMPs crazy fast. Whereas when Shock played against Atlanta, that was a lot of mirror comps with the Sombras where both teams are just, brawling all the time. Same for Hisu with the Philadelphia Fusion. Hisu did play a little bit against the slower-paced comps. Like, the last map of the Valiant was against a slower-paced comp, and I think one, maybe two of the maps against the Gladiators. Actually, I think it was only one of the maps against the Gladiators as well. Even so, I mean, just insane stats from Hisu. Okay.
Still has ults. This one is not over just yet. They managed to touch the point as well with Tuba. Answers a perfect fire line with the bomb out as well. Decay ends up going down and Violet pops the Transcendence.
Let me go back to the beginning of this team fight though. Okay, so beginning of this team fight, the Washington Justice are pushing in. They're gonna get close to a Grav. So the Nano Boost is probably going to come out onto one of the tanks here. The Nano comes out in Decay because he gets hooked in at the beginning, but he still gets Discord Orbed and just shredded. Absolutely shredded. Decay just cannot stay alive against this Discord Orb. And the Bob does huge amounts of work. This comp right here, this is a very powerful counter comp to what the Washington Justice are running. But it relies on you being able to... I mean, it's not even really a counter comp, is it? It's just a better version of the mirror comp, but with the Zen in the backlines. So you definitely can beat the Washington Justice, but you have to... I think you either have to be a ridiculously good Sombra Reaper team or Sombra Tracer team, which the Philadelphia Fusion are. So they could beat them. Shanghai might be able to beat them. Or you have to be able to play a lot of Zen Mercy, and you probably need to play that with a Zarya Roadhog if you're playing on control or if you're playing on defense sometimes as well. So, yeah. Washington's comp is for keeping Decay alive. San Francisco's comp is for killing Decay. Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between the Ana and the Zen, basically. But you will see that in series after this one, whenever they were playing the mirror, aim got swapped to Zen. So the Washington Justice were already learning. putting Aim God over on the Zen puts the same amount of pressure onto their tank line, which means that you even the odds. So now you don't have a shit ton of healing for Decay, you don't have the nano boost to keep him alive, but you can kind of keep the enemy tanks away from him by doing damage to them. And he gets a constant Harmony Orb pocket, so it's not that bad. But yeah, this was the most interesting series that we had this entire week in terms of the meta adaptations throughout the match. So I love this one. Anyway, we've got to the end. The San Francisco Shock won. They made some fantastic mid-match adaptations. And I think they've set a bit of a groundwork for other teams in terms of how you want to defeat the Washington Justice. If you're a team that can't play Hogs Area, if you're a team that you've tried and your Hogs Area comps are just shite, then you still need to be able to play Ash Tracer, Zen Mercy, and you need to take them to maps like Volskaya and like Gibraltar, although you have to have some very specific method of stopping the Washington Justice just dominating you on attack. And I mean, what other maps have we got in the pool that would be good for that kind of stuff as well? Hanamura might be good, but you might as well take them to... Yeah, Hanamura would be good, but you might as well take them to Volskaya because Volskaya is really good already. Havana... Yeah, Havana, you could definitely make this composition work. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, Havana would be a great pick on an escort map. Volskaya is a great pick on an assault map. The control maps, it becomes very difficult because if you're running this, but you've got a Winston and a Diva here instead, if you have Winston Diva, your tank line just can't really fight them. Your tank line can't stay alive long enough for your Ash and for your Zen to get value in the fight. So it becomes hard on control maps. If you're a team that can't play Zarya Hog, you really need to hope that you can beat them with Sombra Reaper on the control maps. And what's another map as well? What's a good hybrid map? Maybe Eichenwald, actually. Maybe Eichenwald. I mean, what are the maps in the pool? Eichenwald, Kings Row, and Hollywood? Oh, yeah, Hollywood is actually... Then again, Hollywood is a good map, but Hollywood defense with Hog, Sigma, and double sniper... I saw the Seoul Dynasty running that, and that looks fucking brutal to break. I don't know how you beat that with a dive team. I don't think you can. I think you have to mirror it. So, Hollywood, you kind of run into the problem that if they manage to attack point A, they might just win the map. Because their defense of point B on Hollywood is probably going to be really good. Numbani? Oh, yeah, Numbani. That's the other map that I forgot about. Yeah, Numbani... See, the problem is for Numbani is that point A is really good against the Washington Justice's comp. But then points B and C, the Washington Justice's comp is really fucking good again. Actually, point B, if you get set up really well with your Zen on a far angle and your Ash on the high ground and you're running Zen Mercy, actually could be really good. So yeah, maybe Numbani's the best pick. Oh yeah, Eichenwald's not even in, is it? Yeah, it's not Eichenwald. What am I talking about? It's Numbani, Hollywood, and Kings Row. So yeah, I think you probably try and take them to Numbani. And you could play Sombra Reaper or Sombra Tracer on defense of point A and dive their backline every time they try and push in, like Paris did, and Paris nearly beat the Washington Justice on Numbani. They were like half a team fight away, like one Bionade away from winning on Numbani against them, just by running the Sombra dive defense. And then once it gets to the rest of the portions of the map, you probably have to run the Zen and the Ash Tracer. Anyway, a very interesting series of matches for next week. I am so excited to see whether Valiant can cook something up in the lab that beats the Justice. It might be what I've been talking about today. It might be something totally different. Who knows? I'm super excited to see whether anyone can beat them. It really feels like Justice are running the gauntlet. Like every time they play a match, you know what they're going to run, but you don't exactly know what your opponents are going to try and countercomp you with. And the Justice are just constantly having to, like, battle against the odds in order to... Not really against the odds because they're such a good team, but they're against, like, against some specific counter strats. It's pretty fun.